Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I'm doing my May wrap-up. I will tell you about why I was unable to post on Wednesday in an upcoming video, so watch for that. But for now, it's enough to say that I read 7 books in May and I'm not mad about it. Several of them were on Kindle because I'm just trying to get through some Kindle books and I've been really into classics lately for whatever reason. Let's get started. The first one is The Wonderful Adventure of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands by Mary Seacole. Mary Seacole was a Jamaican nurse during the Crimean War in the 1850s. However, it turns out that before she went over to Crimea, she also traveled to Panama and lived with her brother for a bit as a nurse there. I believe she was in a couple other of the islands, and then she was in England for a bit while she tried to get to Crimea, and then went to Crimea, nursed the soldiers there, and wrote a book to help shoulder expenses afterwards. Unlike Florence Nightingale, she didn't have a whole lot of money or necessarily powerful sponsors to help her get back to England or Jamaica afterwards. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I wanted more, and I know that's a common complaint with me, but I did want more. I loved how she recognized what her being black did, specifically with different people or different nationalities. For example, like I said, this is the 1830s to the 50s, so slavery is still legal in the States, right up until we fight that nice Civil War. Anyway, she makes several comments throughout the books that people talk about her race, and they say that she's good for a yellow woman, which is a first. I've never heard somebody of African descent called yellow, but apparently that was a thing. So I'm always learning. And also, she very specifically called out the Americans as being some of the worst as far as racism goes. Has much changed? I mean, I'm biased, but let me know what you think. So she definitely calls out the Americans, which I thought was hilarious because she's not wrong. Also, she doesn't necessarily go into gory details, which I appreciated, but she does talk about how she has seen cholera, she has seen malaria, whatever the other big diseases of the time are, and how she treats them. Mustard plaster is one of the big ones. She talks about the people that she gets to know and who and how they all survive in the Crimea. Not knowing really anything about the Crimean War, I thought it was fascinating and well done, and I really enjoyed reading it. Next, I read Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. This is a satire that follows Gulliver, who goes to 4 different lands with various different strange attributes. For example, the first land he goes to is full of little people that are no taller than your hand. The second is full of giants, so that we as humans are no taller than their hands. There's something about talking horses, and there's something about a floating island, if I'm not mistaken. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't quite get as much of the satire as I think was meant to come across. Like I said, I know it was a satire, and so I could see parts of it, but I think it was a very almost obtuse satire, and so that decreased my enjoyment of it. I did enjoy going through all of the lands. I think Swift did a great job at coming up with all of these weird attributes and how this particular human would react to them. However, I have to say I still enjoy A Modest Proposal as a satire much more than Gulliver's Travels. Then I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This one also got a 3 stars because, I mean, why do people really like it? I recognize that some people do love it, and I don't understand it, but I like some books that other people hate too, so whatever works. Primarily, I went into it expecting some sort of typical Victorian era romance, well, written in that era anyway, and it turns out it's not a romance at all, not even close. And if you think it's a romance, I would like to talk to you, because maybe you can explain to me the perception that it is. I really don't understand it at all. But anyway, Heathcliff is just a jerk and made me want to smack him multiple times. The other characters were mostly uninteresting. The narrator is, not the narrator, the guy who the housekeeper is telling the story to didn't strike me as anything special. The housekeeper was interesting. It also sort of struck me as a bit of a Romeo and Juliet kind of a thing a couple of times, and done not great. It was an interesting book, and I'm glad I read it because now I can say I've read it and now I understand the references, but beyond the decent writing and the occasional good comments, it wasn't really my cup of tea. And now we get into the books that I read in hard copy. To start off with, Xenocide by Orson Scott Card. This is the third in the Ender's Game quartet, and this took me, I think, a solid month to read. This got a 3 out of 5 stars. It is almost 600 pages, and through at least 400 of them, I wanted this book done. I was not having it. It does look at religion and science again, and I thought that was interesting. I enjoyed the look at OCD and how that is portrayed and worshipped in one of the colonies in this book. Really enjoyed that, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of plot or character growth, and it seems to just drag on forever. So I'm definitely taking a break from this series for at least a month, maybe 2, before I finish it off, and I will be so grateful when that's done. Because while I think Orson Scott Card does a great job at looking at the dichotomy of science and religion, 2 books of that is beyond enough. Once you get to the third, it's too much. Then we have Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield, and I gave this book 5 out of 5. This book is sort of a magical realism where a girl turns up being carried by this guy in a pub and she's dead. But then she comes back to life. It's a really good book. Books and Things talks about it in books where you don't know whether they're supernatural or not. Some of them come up with a logical explanation, some of them don't, and you have no idea when you go into the book and often by the end of it. This is one, and I absolutely agree with what she said in it. I think this book is fantastic. Love the setting and how much it looks at the river and how the river connects them all. First of all, I just love water in general, but also this book just does such a phenomenal job of looking at the people of the time and how the stories connect them, and how this one story in particular of a girl coming back to life changes a lot for the people along the river. So definitely a 5 out of 5. I also read Aru Shah and the Song of Death by Roshni Chokshi. This is the second, I hope this is the second. We're gonna go with it, this is the second book in the Aru Shah series. The first one being, you know I should know this, the first one being something, and I will find it in a minute. Aru Shah and the End of Time, that was the first one. And in this one, Aru finds other people to go on adventures with, and they have to stop some other great evil. I mean, it's fun. I gave this one, I think, a 4 out of 5 stars. I did like this one better than the first book, I have to say. However, it did also feel a bit like it was ripping off Percy Jackson sometimes, and I get that Rick Riordan is publishing this, and I get that it is essentially a Hindu-centered type of Percy Jackson, if that makes sense. But I also really wanted it to be more independent of and have more of its own flavor. Like I said, there were parts where it felt very cookie cutter Percy Jackson, and as much as I love Percy Jackson, I want my Greek mythology books and my Hindu mythology books to be very clearly separated unless you're merging them, because I don't want to confuse anything. They both have more than enough gods on their own. I do not need to combine them right now. But that said, I still love this book. I love Aru and watching her as she tries to figure all of this out and tries to just figure out being, what is she, 11? Middle schooler? We're gonna go with middle schooler. And the descriptions and the banter is just hilarious. Also, the relationships that develop in this book are beautiful, and I love them. Looking forward to the next book. Hopefully it'll continue to be more and more independent. And lastly, I read The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, which is just a bit of a beast of a book. I did write a review on this in Goodreads that's a bit more comprehensive since I read it at the beginning of the month. I also have a full book review filmed on it. That is spoiler free, so I'll link that down below if you want to check it out. This book is 800 pages of dragons and queendoms and politics. Enough said, right? I gave this book, I think, a 4 out of 5 stars, 4.5, because it's fantastic. The dragons and the politics are great. The relationships feel a little stunted to me, and the sentences are choppy as well. That said, I know a lot of people love Samantha Shannon's writing and her world building. Her world building is amazing. Amazing. But like I said, her writing is just not my favorite. More in my review that I will link down below. But really good book, high fantasy, fantastic standalone. So those are the 7 books that I read in May. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.